afternoon and welcome to Tetewathá, Party Line Talk Show. I'm your host, Luann Stacy, and today we have a two-parter. Coming up in the second part, I will be joined by Vernon Goodleaf and Chief Rhonad Kirby, and we're going to be speaking about Indian Day School settlement and the support from MCK and the programs to try and get people's compensation. So that'll be in the second part. But joining me right now in studio are Chief Gina and Chief Clinton Phillips, and we're going to be talking about getting community input on potential land purchases. And of course, I was curious, what are we talking about? It was like billions of acres of land to get returned. I don't know. I'm just, I was thinking big, you know. Wow. Welcome to the show, first off.
Thanks, Luann.
So when we're looking at purchasing, what's kind of the idea behind that?
Well, I guess, as most people in Kahnawake know, or I should say maybe as many people know, that there's about 90% of Kahnawake is held in privately owned lands, and 10% is in the common. So it's always been something that a desire for us to add to that common base. So recently we've been asked by community members to we were given offers to purchase lands, and I wish we could entertain all the options that we've been getting, but the dollar value would be enormous, and obviously we just can't just buy react to every offer. So right now we're trying to gauge community on how they feel about MCK purchasing common lands. And with that, I mean common lands that are being offered to us. There's also a notion dealing with the federal government right now to help us fix the problems of CPs in the community, whereas you have a lot of lands that are being held up by undivided interests, where, for instance, you might have a 2-acre swath of land and there's 25 people who illegally own that land. So what takes place is the only fix to that by the federal government is someone has to buy everybody else out, and you can imagine the price tag. So there is some dialogue with Ottawa in terms of giving money to Kahnawake to help solve their problem that they created because of the CP process in the community. So that's what we're trying to gauge community. Gina and I. Gina is on the lands portfolio as well. As I guess community knows, MCK underwent a new portfolio structure this past election, and it's taken quite some time for us to go through the entire process. But here we are. Everything is completed at this point, and instead of like one portfolio chief being the lead and maybe a second in some files for conflict of interest purposes, we now have teams. So within the land portfolio, we went from the lead and a second to having 4 chiefs on the file. So it's really about teamwork and bringing each other in, and let's strategize on moving forward. And of course, in regards to lands, I'm fortunate. I have a really great team at the land unit. The land unit right now is run by Martin Stacy, who is the new director of lands. Jean Guillemot is the new land manager, and there was a posting, and I know a job selection for a new job in regards to the land allotment coordinator, which was Jean's former job.
Right.
So there's been a lot of rollover at lands, but again, lands is such a busy unit. I think we're third in the country in terms of the largest workload and turnover of lands in the country.
Wow.
So that says a lot about the people at the land unit. So Gina and I will be holding a kiosk tomorrow at the services complex from 12:30 till 4 o'clock, and again in 2 weeks from tomorrow on the Friday, another kiosk. So if people have questions or want to know more about what we're talking about, maybe they won't hear us this afternoon on the radio, they can show up at the kiosk and ask us questions, and what are we all about and what does this mean. So we do see a lot of problems in Kahnawake in regards to lands, common lands that are held up, as I mentioned, the undivided interest, but also landlocked lands that people cannot access. And it doesn't look like there's going to be a resolve to that. So, the federal government, as I said earlier, they've created these problems for us. So we're looking at them to help us create a solution for the problem they created.
So I guess one of my first questions would be, if the land was purchased, what would be some things that it could be used for? Because we know we have a housing issue. We know we have a whole bunch of other things. And I guess that would be purchasing land, but where would it go and what would be the deciding factor? And I guess that would be something to further explore.
Absolutely. And right now, I mean, most recently it was announced that we did buy land off a family who was selling land, and it was a very good opportunity to add to the common. Plus, everything is about location, right?
Right. So
this plot of land that we bought off a family, we were approached by the family, and the offer was good. We didn't counter offer because I think it's 1.8 acres, but it's directly across from the Kahnawake Golf Club on the 207. So my first thought was, we're always talking and we're always hopeful that, between our works with QKR and with the federal government, that we'll be able to get we'll be able to get water down the 207 for our residents that live down there. And, we all know that the water quality is not the best down there. So, but if that does happen, we will need common land to house lifting stations to help push the water and things backwards as well. So my first thought was, well, if we acquire this land, when the time comes for the lifting stations to go in for the filtered water to go down the 207, we'll have at least one area that we can utilize. So that was first and foremost in my mind, thinking ahead and down the road. But needless to say, I mean, it's almost 2 acres of land, and you don't need that much for a lifting station. So there is nothing that is, planned for that 2 acres of land. It's a beautiful property, full of trees, and it's a nice property, but we're going to need a few more of those down that way for that specific project of water going down to 207. That's just one of the needs that we need.
One, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also economic development, which is Gina's role, and so, there's nothing planned at this point in terms of what we're going to do with it, but there's a lot of possibilities.
Yeah,
and I'll jump in at that.
Go ahead.
Well, my participation, which sparked, my part of the conversation was, I was approached by community members in St. Lucie, some who have the significant parcels of land, and they wanted to know if we were interested. And it's been, several years that we've been asked, and finally there was a serious seller, right? So I brought it to the Mohawk Council, and we had some discussion, and that's where we said, we need to get feedback from community members, and are they interested in purchasing lands, not necessarily just within the community, but outside of the community? Is that a possibility? It's not continuous to the Jowarodu territory, but it's not far, the land that this person has put up, and it was 108 acres, I think. So it was a significant portion of land. So I was talking with Clinton and saying, maybe we could put together a quick little survey to try and gauge, communities' thoughts and ideas on this before we go any further. And he said, well, the kiosks would be a great idea.
Exactly.
So I think it's important, to start to get some feedback. Purchasing land back within the community, I think, is a great idea, and I'd like to know what people think on that. And even if we don't use it right away, I think if we can get things back to the common, because as things develop throughout time, it would be better, because 10% owned by the common is just a very small portion,
That's a very small piece.
Yes, it is. So acquiring it back, I mean, for future generations, we don't necessarily have to develop it right away.
Right.
But again, he talked about having a lift station. You never know what those needs are going to be. So it's something that the table decided that, we should go out there and start looking at this, and this is the first step to us, gauging community's thoughts on it.
And I'm sure people will have lots of thoughts.
And there's a whole variety, from the past that we know of. And, land has actually done a land use planning, and there's been a lot of work that has been done and around purchasing. Well, this is something new. People are coming forward and saying, I would rather see it, in the hands of the Mohawk Council and I want to give you the offer first.
Right.
And when you get an influx, which is what's happening now, like, what do? Do you turn people away, or do we bring it back to the common?
We have a question from a listener. Where would the money be coming from, especially with what's going on with the $25 million in contaminated soil cleanup? Like, where would you get the money to purchase?
Well, that also is, something we need to look at. We've had, the revenue generation through gaming and Mohawk Online, and we also have the EGD project. So we know there are additional dollars coming in. Do we take that from that revenue? Do we look towards the government, who still has outstanding land grievances with us? There are 200 acres that are still owing to us. We did get the 500 acres back, which is Highway 30 207 area. So there are other ways to get monies, but again, gauging the interest first from the community and what their thoughts are around that.
Yeah, I guess maybe just to add to that too, I mean, we do have a land reserve fund that we've had for many, many years at council, and if I'm not mistaken, it's around, right now it's around $300,000 that's left in that reserve. That's been there for many, many years. Prior to me getting to council, that fund has been established. So there are monies set aside for exactly this. And again, as I said, the federal government has a responsibility to help fix the issues and the problems that they've created by the CP system in the community. Once upon a time, it was not like that in this community. You used what you needed, and and that was yours. And nothing was, well, okay, I own this, I own that. I mean, people still consider themselves stewards of the land at that point. You know what I mean? Today is a little bit different philosophy, but nevertheless, there's still a problem, an outstanding problem, and the governments do play a vital role in fixing the wrongs that were done to us.
Another question from a listener is, how will you establish the rate to purchase land per acre per lot? And I guess one of the things you've seen is when some people are selling land, I find it's a ridiculous amount of money that they're asking, and and then some other people sell for a reasonable, and I don't know how that would be determined, and what would be a good rate versus someone.
And that's not an easy question.
No,
that's not an easy question, because we don't have like evaluation per acre per location. You know what I mean? I mean, if you look at the outside and say like the Roussillon area agricultural lands, there's a grid from the Quebec government. I think a lot of people know that there's a plot of land just off the 207, just past the Highway 30 and the greenhouse there, and I believe it's 96 acres. We actually went and looked at that, and we were contemplating it at one point. There's a lot of intrusions on there, including hydro lines and things of that nature. There's also an agricultural designation from Quebec that exists on there, and there's rights of ways. So, I mean, would we seriously consider 96 acres that is full of further intrusions, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of things, but what I'm getting at is there's a Quebec grid for those lands in each municipality. So why it's not being sold right now is that the farmers in the region know that price is seriously overpriced.
Right.
So nobody's biting on it.
No.
So for us to say, the land is worth more along the Seaway than it is on the 207 or lot 106 or whatever, I mean, that's a determination that I don't want to start creating in our community, because I think that will just add to the problem.
Yeah.
So it's basically, we go there, we check the encumbrances. Is it contiguous to common? Is it going to add to a larger chunk? Is it landlocked? Is there possibility for services? There's a lot of questions. When we have a simple formula that just checks in yes, no, yes, no, yes, no kind of a thing, and we come out with a score. So that's our own way to gauge if it's feasible first place. And I guess maybe based on the feasibility of the lot that would be in question, we would come up with a baseline price that we would think would be suitable, but by no means is it foolproof or
And I guess one of the things too, and I think is something that has to be considered when we're talking about land, is all the global warming and the loss of trees in the community and different taking care of species. So I think that has to also be considered, that not everything is going to be brought back is going to be for building or business, or like we as a community have to start taking responsibility of how the lands are being used.
Absolutely.
You know, and people can't forget that piece of it. I usually have my environmental protection people come on once a month. So, you know, we're constantly reminder we have to start doing something now, not waiting 10, 15, 20 years.
Well, and then there's things that are just out of our control. And look at the ash trees.
Yeah.
You know, and so the landscape of Kahnawake is going to change severely, and that we know.
Yeah.
You know, and we have absolutely no control over that.
Yeah. And I guess that's something, too, that needs to be kept in mind. It's not just about dollars and cents, you know?
Well, we had the big tree planting ceremonies here, event, I should say, not ceremony, but the event that took place, and my daughter was one of the people who were involved in that, so she never lets me forget about that.
Of course.
Anything environmental, she criticizes me the minute I put a plastic spoon on the table,
but we have to be mindful of that as well, you know, because we don't have that much wooded areas. We don't have that many spots for medicines. We don't have, like before, this land was flowing, and over the years.
And that's why I'm saying if we purchase land, it doesn't necessarily mean we have to develop that land, right? Because we look at the trees and how they clean the air and all the issues we have in the community, which I'm always saying as the autoimmune diseases, right?
Right.
And it's environment linked. So if you want to have greenery around you and trees, you're getting clean air, right?
Yeah.
So it's important.
And that part can't be forgotten. I had to mention that.
No,
I'd be remiss if I didn't.
But, you know, you're 100% right. And I think every time I drive across the Mercia Bridge coming home, you get reminded how much trees we have in the community, because it's a canopy of green when you're driving over, and it's like, wow, that's where I live. You know, that's ours.
That was always my best picture. It was always coming back over that bridge and watching, and how lucky we are, you know?
Absolutely.
We have a few more minutes, so maybe one more time about the kiosk and the purpose of the kiosks and the date and time.
Yes, it'll be tomorrow starting at 12:30 till 4. We'll be at the bank. So we want to put together a quick little survey. I've done the same thing with gaming, and it was really successful. A very quick little questionnaire. And we will be there on the 31st, which is also a Friday. And again, you know, in the afternoon, 12:30 to 4. And we'd like to talk to people how they feel about acquiring lands back for the common.
And I guess one more question on this is, is there squatters' right? Do squatters' rights apply in Kahnawake?
To my knowledge, no.
No way. It's a Quebec law. It's not. It doesn't apply in here. No.
No.
As far as I know, the answer to that question is no.
Yeah. And it's just, what's your opinion on the law?
What's my opinion on the law?
Yeah, squatters' rights. I think you just think of the seigneury. Just saying, you know. You know.
Exactly. I mean, Chateauguay's been squatting, Saint Remy's been squatting, Saint Constant's been squatting. You know, so I don't know what, you know, in what context the person is questioning that. But in my opinion, it goes back to philosophies, and we take care of the land, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a difficult question to ask on the fly, or to answer on the fly.
One more question with regards to this. If people have questions, how can they get a hold of you? Like, if they can't make it to the kiosk, how can they get a hold of you?
They can reach us at MCK, 450-632-7500, and you can email us. It's our names. It'll be clinton.phillips@mck.ca or gina.deer@mck.ca.
Because I think sometimes some people are afraid to do the face-to-face, but, you know, might say, can I call you? And, you know, we still have a lot of people that like to call, you know.
I mean, we get phone calls every single day from community, so, you know, people know how to reach us. And, you know,
just a reminder.
Yeah, or you mean, did they see us at the bank or at the post office or whatever? Just stop and ask. I mean, you know, that's part of our job as well, you know.
Is this kind of like trying to be more transparent? I mean, that has been a big complaint or a big issue with the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake. Is this a step towards getting people included in decision making, and before you get ahead, as you know what happens?
We're always trying, though, to keep community engaged, right? And that's why we have the constant press releases. That's why we have the talk show, and we have the KTV segments, and things are always put out there. So it's important to get feedback, and we actually have to draw it out of people, right? So,
you know, it's actually funny, you know, because according to Indian Affairs, Kahnawake is in the top 5 of most transparent reserves in Canada. but yet a lot of times people feel we're not transparent enough. So it's kind of, you know what I mean? And, we have monthly community meetings every season, quarterly, and it's hard sometimes to 12 of us sitting there, and we're talking to the same 7 people after land allotments are done on the same issues. So we're trying to be transparent. We have MCK Friday here with you. We have 2 newspapers in the community.
Right.
We have this, really glorious radio station that we are so proud of. And so we have the means,
Yeah.
We're trying.
I have one more question from a listener. Are the land civil matters? And that's apparently from Land's office. I'm not sure what's meant by land civil matters. I'm not sure.
I don't understand the question.
I'm not sure what they mean either.
No.
But I guess I wanted to make a comment, the money goes away, but land doesn't.
Yeah. And I think that's the truth. That's one thing. And a lot of times you won't get it back either once it's gone,
That's just it. And that's I guess our biggest fight with the scenery of Sault Ste. Louis.
Yeah.
Historically, it's factual, and now it's the fight to try to get something back, and we are fighting.
And it's still no movement on that? No.
Not much.
I ask all the time, and it seems like it's gotten more of a snail's pace than it actually...
Well, it's different philosophies. We had a different procedure with the Conservative government, the new federal government. The Liberals have a different way of doing business, which is very much different than what was promoted under Conservative regime with the chief federal negotiator and the formal structure that they were promoting. This federal government is promoting a different structure, so we're kind of back at square one,
okay,
if you will.
Okay. Thank you, Clinton. Thank you, Gina. If you want to check out and have an input tomorrow at the Services Complex between 1 and 4 p.m., and we'll take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Tetewathá, Party Line Talk Show. I'm your host, Luann Stacy, and for the second part of our show, we're going to be talking about the Indian Day settlement, and I'm joined by Vernon Goodleaf and Chief Rhonad Kirby. Welcome to the show. I would imagine since Monday, you guys have been really lots happening, right, with the announcement of the settlement actually being paid out.
Well, for sure. We've been extremely busy in the last couple of days, but we have been keeping track of what has been going on with the class action suit. And I guess I'll just give a little bit of the history of the suit. In 2009, Gary McLean initiated a class action suit against the federal government for the harm and abuses that were suffered through individuals attending Indian Day schools. So right now, the number that they're looking at is approximately 200,000 Indigenous children across Canada who were forced to attend these schools during the day but went home at night. So it's the same idea as those who attended the residential schools. So he and his lawyers reached an out-of-court settlement with the federal government in 2018. The settlement was approved by the federal court on August 19th, 2019, and the claims process just opened this week. So during that time, there was also an appeal made for certain reasons. That took a little bit of time. That appeal was denied. Since then, the chief who had originally submitted that has decided not to make a further appeal to it. So right now we're looking at the process starting. It's quite a big, I'd say, project. It's not our project, but we have taken the initiative to look at a lot of the things that are going on within this class action settlement. We do know that between Kahnawake and Six Nations, we have the largest community of individuals who attended these schools. We will talk about the schools later on, but we do have a current list of 10 schools that were here in the community starting in
1868.
1868. Wow.
Running all the way to 1988.
Wow.
So there was certainly a significant number. I mean, you and I attended the schools during that time, so there's certainly a significant number of people who would make applications. One of the things is the abuse that had gone on during that time, and people would be able to make applications, and depending on the severity of their application or their abuses, depending on what it went to, there are different amounts that can be claimed. We know that individuals from the community have already put some claims in
Months
ago, but it was a draft. There has been some changes to the application. They're relatively minor, but if anyone has put it in, it does say draft. So we're really not sure. We don't think they would be accepted, and we're encouraging everyone
to reapply.
To reapply.
No, they would need to use the court-approved ones that were released this Monday.
Okay. So where do we find those ones? Where would community members find those ones?
You can find them online at indiandayschools.com or at MCK Main Reception.
Okay. So what happens then? Like, what do people have to do? Like, what would they have to?
Well, they would
fill it out.
Fill out the application. It is quite a lengthy application. There's 15 pages. You have to put your date of birth, the name of the school that you had gone to, what years you attended, the location of the school, and there's a box that you would have to check off depending on what the harm was that you suffered.
Right.
It does go into details about if there is significant sexual abuse that you could write a statement, and someone would have to witness that, and that would have to be sent in with your application. So you can either email it right back if you're doing it online yourself, or mail it, or you could fax it. And just to let everyone know, we did have an issue this week because there are so many pages that have to be submitted. It took long even for one application to go through. Plus, we have to photocopy any of their documents because they're not able to send the originals. So we're trying to figure out how to do that, but I think the best bet would be to, if you're able to do it online, or put it in the mail.
Right.
One of the questions that we've had is how long would that process take? And
just to get a status update is at least 3 weeks.
Okay.
And that's just a status update on your application.
And who knows after that, right? Because I would assume they would have to check and verify information, and because I would think you said 10 schools, so I would imagine there would be a list of students for each of the schools, the years.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Okay, so I just, to give you an idea of some of the names of the schools, going back to 1868, one was the Caughnawaga Boys. Later on in 1906, Caughnawaga Bush. 1891, Caughnawaga Girls. Then there was the Caughnawaga Mission, and only it was in the early 1900s that the Cattery School came into effect. We also had one school that in 1949, Caughnawaga St. Isidore. Caughnawaga Continuation, and that was in 1924. And the latest ones would be Ietsénhaienhs from 1966 up to 1988, as well as Cattery School, and what was now called Gomeranoru in 1969, but at that time was also known as the United Church.
Yes.
Indian Day School.
Yes.
'Cause that's where I went. So we do have the list. We were discussing it this morning that we will put more information in the papers next week with the list of schools.
Yeah.
So I think since Monday, given out a significant number of applications.
A little over 200. I think we're nearing 250 so far.
That's actually good, but that's a lot of people. And I guess a question, what happens if someone's deceased and had gone to some of those schools? Can the family collect on their behalf?
Yes. Estates of day school survivors who passed away on or after July 31st, 2007 will be eligible to apply.
Okay.
So they do ask for a number of things in the application, like if you had a report card, if you had a class picture,
Right.
and things like that. But they're very specific about what they're asking. And what was unusual, I think, in one of the questions, if you had a yearbook, and I'm wondering in the early 1900s if they would even have a yearbook.
I don't
type
even
of
think in the early 80s there would have been yearbooks at elementary school,
Yeah,
you know? I mean, to me, that was more of a high school kind of thing. I don't know. Right?
So we will be having information sessions in the upcoming weeks to let everyone know. We will have the application forms available for anyone. And we do realize that, for some individuals, it may trigger some issues.
Yes.
And we are working along with KSCS, and we will have some of their resource people there with us at the information sessions if anybody needs someone
Support.
to talk to.
On that note, let's take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Tetewathá, Partyline Talk Show. I'm your host, Luann Stacy, and today we're talking about the Indian Day settlement, school settlement, and I'm joined by Vernon Goodleaf and Chief Rhonda Kirby. Rhonda, you mentioned a little while ago about MCK support. So I guess what is MCK supporting, and where would the location be, and what kinds of things can people expect? Because I think it's important. This task is not an easy task, by no means. And for a lot of people, it wasn't a good time in their life, and some people don't remember. So I'm curious, to know what is MCK involved in?
Well, for the last couple of months, I mentioned that we've been keeping abreast of what's been going on. We realize, the depth of this issue. We are in the process of finalizing a contract for a coordinator for this specific project. We are right now sort of in limbo. Office space is really short.
Yeah.
But for now, to have that individual really brought up to speed and be well aware of all the information that's available. We are looking for a place that would be accessible for everyone in the community to attend, so that if they need a private area to speak to our coordinator, that would be a possibility. But for right now, we do have a working group that is comprised of individuals at MCK as well as KSCS. So we're just trying to make sure that everyone, and the other person is Brian Daibo.
Okay.
At Indian Affairs Office. So we want to make sure that we're all on the same page, we're all giving out the same information, and as much as possible right now, Vernon is the contact person at MCK, so that if there are any questions, and he'll be able to help out.
So who's actually assisting with helping fill out the forms and doing the administrative piece to this? Because that's a lot. 15 pages is a lot. So how is it working?
Well, mostly I haven't helped anybody with their forms yet. It goes between me and Dennis Daibo.
Okay.
He has helped some people. I will be in the near future. Mostly I'm answering questions on clarifying a lot of confusion on just basic stuff that's not clearly worded in the form.
I know. I looked at the form and I found some of the questions didn't make sense, and I wondered if it was done in a different language or something, because it just didn't seem, or if it was translated, because it didn't make sense, and I was looking to answer and stuff, and it was just
Well, 2 pages are actually on what the actual settlement is. The explanation of part 1 to part 7 is 1 page, and then, as I had mentioned before, your personal information, the documents that are required to be sent. And again, I have to stress that you should not send your originals, because you're not guaranteed to get them back. So that's something that you are able to do at our office. And again, it's personal information, your current living area, so they can get in contact with you, the location of the school. although it is 15 pages, they're trying to explain, what actually you need to do, and it does actually ask you at the end of the form, are you sure that you have filled out this? What box did you check? Because as we had mentioned earlier, the claims are between 10,000 and 200,000. So
5 levels.
Oh, 5 levels?
Of compensation.
So again, some individuals may not be comfortable.
Right.
And the individual that we're looking at to hire will have that responsibility and empathy and to be able to help the individual. So, and one of the things is that the youngest person at this point is 40 years old.
Yes.
That can apply.
Yeah.
Up to. So we know that there'll be a lot of older community members who have certainly been part of the system in the past, and we have to reach out to them.
Because that's what I was wondering, because those are not people who may be functional on with email, those kinds of things. So that was going to be my next question. What are some of the things to help support that? Because it's an older population.
And if an individual does call, the person that we're hiring will have access to a laptop and can fill it out. Or, help them to actually write out what was part of their situation.
Yeah, plans for the future are kind of to have some information sessions where people can come in sort of a group environment and get the idea of how to fill things in and get some on-hands help.
Because like I said, I found it a little bit difficult if I put myself in this older type of group. It's not younger people where,
And even if there are individuals out there and who have family members who are in that range of those ages, we can go there and have the session at someone's home. So if you have 8 or 10 people in the family, we can do that. And we think that, once we start getting out into the community and talking to everyone, that information will go out there and we'll hopefully be able to see as many people as possible.
There's, in terms of applying for this, there's a deadline.
Yes.
Okay.
That's 2.5 years from last Monday. So it ends, the claims process ends July 13th, 2022.
My question is how long is the support going to be in place for people?
Well, that's something we've talked about with KSCS, and they're well aware of the situation and the scope of this. So it could be a long term, but again, when we do have our information sessions, we will have staff available to talk to any individuals who want to go into a little breakout room.
Yeah. Because I think that's important. You don't know once you start filling it out what could happen. And when this first came to be, I had Tom Deerhouse on the show, and we talked about that, and he said some people just really don't even want to talk about it. They don't want to hear it, don't want to have anything to do with it. And he says, so it's been like the full gamut of people who are ready to do the claim where other people just don't want to bring it up.
And the numbers that we're looking at possibly for this community alone is about 5,000 people.
That's a lot.
Judging on the year that the school was open, and all the different schools. So we want to make sure that we get out the information now. Because we do have 2 years for everyone to make an application, but we don't want to wait till the end. Like I said, the Six Nations also has a very big population, way more than we have.
I'm sure.
And, we don't know how long it takes once the application goes in. So if we can get that information out as soon as possible, we are looking to have postcards in the mailboxes very soon, so that individuals can start thinking about it.
Yeah.
We know that social media may not be the best avenue.
Not with this particular thing,
for other age groups certainly works, but we will still use it, but I think it'll be more of the individual contact that's important.
Exactly. So the kiosk and inviting people and trying to get out visibly. In terms of you don't know the time frame, for paying back for people getting their and they gave no indication.
The only indication we have is a status update on your application after 3 weeks.
Wow.
That's about all the information we have.
So who knows, it could take even longer.
And then how does one get a status update?
They would have to call the information line. I don't know if I have the number here.
And it would just go by the individual's name, I guess.
Yeah, it's the one number that I don't have here.
Yeah. But I guess that's once the claim goes in.
Okay,
and,
yes.
Like I said, we know that we've already given out close to 200.
Yeah, you can call the claims administrator, Deloitte, at 1-888-221-2898.
And you figure today's only Thursday, so 200 and something, that's okay. I mean, it's not bad considering it's new.
There was 2 articles in Yardi USA today. There is a big portion of it to say that, it may be detrimental, or I'm not really sure of the words, but, it's certainly something that we have to be aware of and consider it, for all these individuals. So we want to make it, please understand that, all information is confidential. If we did have a little bit of a backlog at the office yesterday trying to fax.
Yeah.
And it even for one application, it took almost 15 minutes. So you have to wait for that little confirmation to come back to say, yes, it's gone through. So we're trying to work that out and figure out what would be the best way, because at this point, we may have to actually keep the applications at our office until we can get to and bog up the system.
Yeah, because it seems like it's taking long. That's being done at the main MCK office? Okay.
Yep. But, you are able to mail your application in. I would think if you have a group of family members that are sending it in, that you send it in one particular package and have it registered. So you're guaranteed that someone's going to be signing for it at the other end.
And I think that's important sometimes too, is to register, not to just throw it in the mail. And
yeah, because you're not sure, did they get it? Did I not get it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something about the claims forms. I've gotten a couple of questions now about particularly level 1, because you have to fill out 2 or 3 pages, and they were wondering if they should only send those pages. And I just want to say, send the entire application, otherwise it's incomplete.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's good.
Even
good
if there are pages that have not been filled out, send the entire application. Don't take it apart.
And I guess that will be part of the role here too, is as things become, it's brand new. So, there's going to be kinks, there's going to be. So I guess as it goes on, you'll play that role in terms of getting that information out for people. So people need to be informed.
Like I said, we'll be sending out postcards to everyone in the community, and even if community members right now have relatives who are not living in this area any longer, they can still make an application.
Yeah. And I'm still lost on that 10 school part, and half of those schools I never even heard of.
Well, they're from the late 1800s and early 1900s. So, but and we mentioned it. We're looking at a possibility of 5,000 people making the application.
That's a lot. That's really a lot. We still have a few more minutes.
If you look at our community, and then I'm not even sure of what the numbers are of people who actually attended residential schools. So
at one point in time, there was a lot, and I'll use my grandmother's age. Almost everybody at that point had left to go to residential schools. So I'm assuming somewhere between there, and she was born in 1913. So I guess it was a balance of some staying here and some heading out.
So children still suffered the same thing as residential schools, but you just went home at night.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you think of your own children today and what would happen, it's really a sad thing, and again, we stress that we're well aware that it might trigger a lot for certain individuals, and we want to make sure that we will be there to help you.
I think sometimes people don't realize the degree of trauma that had caused to many people in our community. My grandmother went to residential school, and I used to ask about it because I wanted to know, and she outright refused telling me anything. And I tried several times, and I said, it's not for anything. I just really wanted to know, and understand. And what was interesting is when she turned turned 18, she bolted out of here, and that was it. You know, and I wonder how many other people had that same experience. You know,
And, you know, maybe she didn't want to tell you because she didn't want you to hurt.
yeah. Yeah.
You know, knowing
Yeah.
that story
Absolutely.
of what had happened.
But I knew of other people in her family who were in the same boat, and people outright said, no, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to have anything to do with it. But it still caused trauma, you know.
For sure.
Impacts our language, impact a break in our culture. You know, people thought they were doing good by sending their children to school, but it ends up impacting more than I think we ever thought.
You know, and I don't think there's any amount of money in the world that would, you know, make any of this any better.
No.
But you know, it's important for people to reach out and get the help, and it might make a difference in their life now and for, you know, their children or grandchildren.
For sure, because it's multi-generational. What happened to our grandparents, our great-grandparents, it filters down.
So we just want to let everyone know that we do have the forms available at the main office. It is a 15-page document. It's important that if you do have any questions, you contact Vernon.
Yep.
And we will be putting out more information in the next couple of weeks and as well for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that, again, if anything, we are trying to just keep a record of how many individuals have made applications. So if we can get close to that, if we're nearing that 5,000 mark, you know, we've possibly hit our target.
Right, and that's a guesstimate, or
It's a guesstimate.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Vernon, any quick tips for people to help the process go along?
Just,
Only been 4 days, but I'm assuming.
one of the big things is make sure you have an official claims form that you get from MCK main office online at indiandayschools.com. Make sure it doesn't say draft across it.
Yes.
Make sure you send the entire form. When you're making your application, don't include any original documents. And you can contact me at MCK main office, or you can send an email to idsclaims, all one word, at mck.ca.
Rhonda?
So the other thing is that depending on the level that you're looking to send in your application, you will need a guarantor to sign off on your document. And it's not for anyone else to read it, but just to say that this person has
Signed it, witnessed.
your
Okay.
signature.
Okay.
So you need to wait until you're ready to send it in, and the guarantor's name must be filled out. And so it's a bit of a process, but again, you know, we're there to help everyone.
Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you, Vernon. I'm sure you'll be back on the show with more details in a few weeks. I'm positive of it. Coming out next, tomorrow on Tetewathá is the 207 Longhouse. I'll be joined by Kenneth Deere. Up next is 1 o'clock news. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Onagiwahi.